Happy New Year! And I will promise I will make more book reviews. So, that's one of my New Year's resolutions. Today, I will be doing a book review on Oathbringer, the third book in the Stormlight Archive series by Brandon Sanderson. This is probably going to be a fairly long video, considering I wrote a heck of a lot on this. I wrote like a 4-page essay on it once I finished, so I'm gonna say a lot. I read this in 8 days. I recommend this series to anyone who has long reading stamina, because each of these are more than 1,000 pages. I love it, and it is so amazing. You should all read it, if you can read long books. The first 2 books are The Way of Kings and Words of Radiance. This is also part of the Cosmere, which is the whole universe in which most of Brandon Sanderson's books take place. It's a fantasy series that takes place on the fictional planet Roshar. It's sort of medieval feeling, but it has magic. And the humans on Roshar are in danger of being at war with the evil humanoid Parshendi creatures. And so you get a couple different perspectives. You get a lot of different perspectives, actually. The main ones are Kaladin, who is the soldier and the slave, Shallan, who's the artist, Dalinar, who's the warrior and the leader, and Adolin, who is Dalinar's son and an extreme flirt. So if you like long books and fantasy, read this. Read these books. They are so amazing. I was going to include the summary, but I think it's safe to say that if you all have read the book, you know approximately what happens, and I don't have to spend that much time on my video on it. So I'm gonna focus on just my thoughts on the book. Alright, as I told you, I wrote a 4-page essay on this, and I will be using it to say a lot of stuff. I've never read a book that makes you question right and wrong so much. Finding out that they weren't native to Roshar made them wonder, like, are we actually doing the right thing by fighting the Parshendi? Because they're the ones that started out here, and then we took their land. It's like, who was there first? Who deserves the land? And then there's the whole, if our ancestors were fighting for this for so long, should we still fight for it? Like, is it still our battle? That's a big thing. The humans and the Parshmen have been fighting for longer than anyone can remember, because it was their ancestors that started the fight, and they don't know which side started it. They were all brainwashed to think that their side was correct. And now it's like, is their side really correct? Should we keep fighting, or what should we do? That's a hard question. And then there's the fact that Kaladin was friends with both sides, and Kaladin is about to fight all of the Parshmen when he finds his own team of Parshmen that he helped earlier, right at the front of the line. And then he's like, oh my god, I can't do this. I can't kill my friends. And then he tries to stop the fighting, and then all of his friends, like, kill each other, and I feel so bad for him. Because he loves everyone. Because they don't have a psychological problem killing the other side's soldiers, because they don't know each other. But Kaladin knows both of them, and that sort of caused the first half of his breakdown. And then we have the second half of his breakdown. Elhokar stands up and starts to say the first ideal, holding his son. Moash comes up, and Kaladin pleads to him and asks him to do the right thing. And Moash kills Elhokar before he finishes the first ideal. And all of the readers cry. A lot. At least me. I cried a lot. I think we can all agree that we didn't like Elhokar at the beginning of the series, but by now he was growing on us. I started to like him. He wasn't that bad in Oathbringer. And he was close to redemption, and then this happens! And he was speaking the first ideal. And he was holding his son. You're giving us all the feels, Brandon. Why are you giving us the feels? That was half of the emotional pain Brandon Sanderson gave us in that scene. The other half was Moash. I think it's safe to say that we all were expecting or hoping for a redemption arc of Moash that we did not get in any way. I would have thought that he would at least have listened to Kaladin. But no. In my ELA class, I learned about foils that are characters that are used to contrast other characters in order to emphasize their qualities. And I feel like Kaladin and Moash were foils. They both have to have something in common, and Moash and Kaladin were both part of Bridge 4. They were both slaves at some point, and they were both kidnapped by the Parchmen. They were both extremely badly treated by humans also. Moash decided that since some of the humans had been so bad to him, they were evil and the Parchmen were good, so he joined the Parchment army. And then he sort of put revenge as his top priority and like became evil. Kaladin understood that not all humans are bad just because some humans are bad. And I think also not all Light Eyes are bad, because he definitely, at the beginning, he definitely thought that all Light Eyes were bad. And now he's like, there are some nice Light Eyes. There are also some really horrible Light Eyes. And there are some nice Parchmen and some horrible Parchmen. And I feel like that was Kaladin's side of it. He understood that both sides had good people, I guess. I feel like on the topic of foils, you could also use Moash as a foil for Dalinar, because both of them made like really bad decisions and ended up in a really bad place, and Moash blamed his misfortune on circumstance. This is everyone else's fault and not mine attitude. And in chapter 118, when Odium was trying to get Dalinar to admit that he had been influenced by Odium, Dalinar, he didn't. He accepted that he made mistakes, and he took responsibility for his actions, and that was what helped him defeat Odium, because Odium was banking on the fact that Dalinar would accept that he was being influenced. Dalinar got a lot more character development in this book than in any other book. His character development was mostly because of the return of memories from Evi. I didn't like Dalinar before he went to the Night Watcher, because he was a jerk to Evi, actually. And he just had no concept of, like, there are some good people who are not on my side, which was back to what we were talking about with Moash and Kaladin. He was sort of like Moash back then. Like, right after Evi's death, he sort of blamed her. He, like, called her a fool. And he was trying not to blame himself. And then he sort of came to terms with the fact, when he was fighting off Odium, that he had kind of caused Evi's death. And he sort of understood that. And that was helped him beat Odium. More character development with Shallan. She got so much character development. Which was surprising, because we got a lot of character development in Words of Radiance also. It was such a good way, the fact that she's a Lightweaver and she was able to make her own personas, that was such a good way to depict her inner conflict, I guess. I don't know if it went as serious as split personality disorder, but it sort of seems like that was about what she was going through. She could have such different mindsets with Shallan and Veil and Radiant. It's like, It's like Shallan was sort of conflicted between Adolin and Kaladin, and Radiant had an extreme crush on Adolin, and Vale had an extreme crush on Kaladin. The extremes of her personality right there, and that was such a good way to depict that. And then in chapter 82, when she breaks down, that was so meaningful with what Wit said to her, and the scene with the two Shallans and the forgiveness for herself. I really loved that scene, and I love Wit, and I love Shallan, so I love all of them, except, like, Moash. More on Kaladin, because I love him. Most people have been disappointed that Kaladin didn't speak the fourth ideal in this book, but I think it makes sense that he didn't, because we know he's not perfect, because he's a human and he's a Brandon Sanderson character, but he sort of was pictured as the hero who could do basically anything. He sort of forced himself to be that way. He was like, I have to save these people, and I also have to save these people, and I have to protect everyone. He just, like, pushed himself to be perfect for so long that it makes sense that he couldn't reach the next point. Adolin and his sword, Mylaren. Before that, he was basically extreme flirt and, like, fashion-obsessed airhead. Not completely, but mostly. But then he went to Shadesmar, and he saw that it was personified by the Deadeye's Spren in Shadesmar, and he was like, wow, my Shardblade's a person in a different world. Well, he was kind of scared of her for a while, and then he sort of warmed up to her. When he went back to the regular world, he was speaking to her, and she replied to him. And she said her name, and he started calling her by her name and giving her a human pronoun. And then he gave her the nickname the way he does to everyone. And I love how his mindset changed with that. And he calls her Maya just like a human. He summons her in battle and she comes in 7 seconds. 7 seconds! For a Shardblade, that is a big thing. It's like, she loves him a lot. I love their little sword-human relationship. It's so cute. So he sort of became her friend, and it was so cute! The one we've all been waiting for, Renarin, and the scene with Jasnah. When he started receiving visions of the future, which is, like, scary to the Alethi, because that's a sign of odium. And in chapter 116, during the Battle of Thaylen City, Jasnah came into the temple and found Renarin summoning his Spren Gliss, who is a Spren of odium. And he was saying, no, not father, please. He saw a vision of Jasnah killing him, and then one even worse of Dalinar turning to odium. This is a quote. He didn't want to die, but strangely he found himself welcoming Jasnah's strike. Better to die than to live to see what was happening to his father. So he cares about his father enough to not want to see him turn to the wrong side. But then, Jasnah dismissed her blade and comforted him and hugged him, and the readers cried. And he found out that his visions could be wrong and hoped that his vision about his father was wrong. And then he went back to the battle and protected Adolin and became an awesome warrior. Renarin is the small bean and deserves to be protected, and we will all protect him. Jasnah, we were all happy that she was back. Yay. That was a really awesome scene where she insulted Amaram. We didn't see her mourning Elhokar, but she was really sweet to Renarin, and then she ended up, like, empowering him to join the battle. And she is amazing. She is super awesome, and I am so happy that she is the new queen, because I could not imagine a better queen, a better ruler of Kholinar, because she's awesome. Even Shallan. I feel like Shallan doesn't seem like the queen type, but Jasnah definitely does. Seth got a redemption, and he and Lift becoming friends were really cute, and Seth is cool. Oh, I realized that I have been imagining Seth as One Punch Man this entire time. One Punch Man. Does this not look like Seth's son Valano, Truthless of Shinovar, to you? Because to me it totally does. Anyway, yeah, back to the actual discussions. Dalinar learning to read. I really liked that. Dalinar says, "We took shard blades from the women, and they seized literacy from us. Who got the better deal, I wonder?" That's a big thing, I think. The men, like, claimed war, and the women claimed literacy. In Oathbringer, war started to open up to not just the men, and the shard blades were able to be used by women like Shallan and Lift and Jasnah and Lyn, and so they started getting their half of the equality, and then Dalinar learning to read was the beginning of men getting back literacy and getting back sort of gender equality on that basis. I want to talk about Sanderson's second law, which is the actual name for it on BrandonSanderson.com. This is a quote from the website. "It isn't what the heroes can do that is most important to who they are, but what they have trouble doing." And I think that is a big thing in this series. The characters are so not perfect, and that is what makes them amazing. It's like you have Dalinar with his memory loss and his fear of the thrill, and he sort of still has a little bit of that ruthlessness in battle. And then you have Shallan, who's like trying to help people and not being able to, and you have her split personality and her guilt of like killing her parents. And you have Kaladin, who blames himself for everything and pushes himself to be perfect. He's sort of dealing with that pain constantly of losing everybody and failing everybody, or feeling like he failed everyone. And then there's Renarin with feeling like he's not good enough and wanting to impress everyone but not knowing how. And none of them are perfect, and they all have their own problems and their own weaknesses, and that is what makes you love them even more. And I love them. The crossovers with Warbreaker. Obviously, there's a crossover in all of the books. Wit or Hoyd appearing in all of the different books, although he does appear way more often in this book than in basically any other book, except maybe Wave Kings. Okay, I noticed the Nightblood thing and the fact that he mentioned Vivenna by name, but I had to have this pointed out to me. People have figured out that High Marshal Azur is actually Vivenna. She has a color in her name. Azur is a color, blue. and she is searching for a man with, this is a direct quote, a shard blade that bleeds black smoke. The man is Vasher, which I'm pretty sure people have said that it's Zahel. I love this book and this series and this universe and this author so much. You don't even know. Comment your thoughts. I have been talking about this a lot and I really want to talk about it with people, so please comment what you think. And tell me what other books you want me to review, and Happy New Year! See you in 2018. Bye!